Greetings, everyone, and welcome to We Are ACEDS, streaming live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. My name is Mike Quartararo. I am the president of ACEDS. Today, we will be joined shortly by Jordan McQuown. I'm sure I screwed up that pronunciation. Chief Information Officer, Chief Information Security Officer for IST Management, and Judson White, Regional Vice President for eDiscovery. Both have a wealth of experience in our space, and IST Management recently joined us as an affiliate partner. So we figured it made sense to have a conversation, catch up a bit, and showcase to the eDiscovery community our new eDiscovery partner in the world and any happenings at IST. IST Management, of course, is a leading service provider, professional services firm in eDiscovery and litigation support, among other things. You can learn more about IST at istmanagement.com. Gentlemen, welcome to We Are ACEDS. Thank you so much for making time to join us today. How are we doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having us, Mike.
No, happy to do it. All right, let's start with a couple of quick introductions. For those who don't know, Jordan, tell us a little bit about your journey in eDiscovery and your role at IST.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. So, my journey starts probably like most people's journey, where we never really heard of this eDiscovery business and then fell somehow into it. From my perspective, I started as technology and technology support, technology leadership. I found my way to a legal technology consultancy based in Nashville, where I still reside. And then one day we really took on a couple of large projects. And as with any good technologist, when we're presented a challenge, we say yes, and we'll figure out how we're going to deal with it. So my journey started right around 2013, and I've stayed in this space since.
Awesome. Judson, how about you? How'd you get involved in eDiscovery, and what do you do for IST?
So my journey is pretty unique for the industry. I actually come from the litigator side. I worked as a case manager and within law firms in the Washington, D.C. region for really my entire career until the past year. I made the shift to service provider. So as a paralegal and as a case manager, I kind of had a lot of, in the weeds experience working on the other side of the eDiscovery world. And I kind of, developed my expertise and got involved with ACEDS through that. And it wasn't until recently that I saw eDiscovery as the future of the industry, and I kind of wanted to get more involved in that. So I made the shift to the service provider world, and now I'm here at IST. I manage both the Washington, D.C. regions and the Pacific Northwest, helping clients with their eDiscovery needs, both law firms and corporations.
Awesome. Well, thanks both of you for joining us. And thanks, IST, for supporting ACEDS. So let's get into it a little bit. Listen, guys, across the industry, I think that everyone's trying to identify and implement workflows that improve collaboration, make the eDiscovery process more efficient. Tell us a little bit about what IST is doing to address these challenges specifically.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the question. And I think, the first way when you kind of put that forward in looking at collaboration and efficiency, I think that there's a key word that we use quite a bit at IST, and that's called empowerment. And that empowerment for us means that our project managers, who are really the client facing, people who are walking through the process, who know the case, what's going on, where all of the evidence lies, where the project status is, and so we do a pretty large amount of focus on making sure we're training and retaining, the best talent we can find across the project management, forensics, and, really instilling those consultant-like skill sets. You can elaborate that to, I've seen the numerous memes around the, if I train my people and they leave, what happens? We like to look at it obviously from if we don't train them and they stay, how do we get or bring more to the table? So when we look at collaboration, really facilitating that and empowering our PMs, they essentially have the ability to pull in any resource across the organization. So, as you mentioned, IST has a pretty diverse business line with a lot of different skill sets across the table. And the magic thing to me about eDiscovery is there's really no one size fits all whether it be a data issue, a corporate IT structure issue, some sort of application that brings unique challenges, having that team of whether it be developers, the forensics technicians, or the technology ecosystem, really to bring in and collaborate on a unique way to solve a problem, I think really helps bring that collaboration. Because again, if we're not a partner who's actually bringing something to the table, getting to a collaboration with a client is never going to occur. Going forward, we look to have partnerships. Even as a service provider organization, we don't have the skill sets for every unique challenge that may happen, or maybe a very specific area or niche area that we just don't run across enough to retain that skill set continuously. And at the end of the day, when a client comes to us, even if it's not a partnership, we can at least give a referral so that they have a one-stop shop to basically help them guide to get whatever their clients need. And then, from an overall communication perspective, our target is to over communicate to be the best partner possible. Our team is very experienced working across all spectrums of legal, whether it being in-house, service provider, or whatnot, to really help navigate that. And so, I think from approaching collaboration and efficiency by having the right resources to being that trusted partner, to really get to what the end of the goal is in discovery, which is finding the relevant information across all of the proverbial landmines. As abundance of data continues to occur, really the only way to deliver more efficiency is to weed through the garbage to get to the key facts.
Yeah, no, what's always been interesting about e-discovery to me, and I'm a little out of practice, although I spent 20 years working in law firms, is it never gets boring, right? There's always some new challenge around the corner. And so let me ask your part of your role is in information security. So with the increased use of things like encrypted apps, all this cloud storage, this massive movement to the cloud, in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis, what are some of the challenges that you're encountering in collections, and how does IST sort of deal with those? How are they overcoming those challenges?
Yeah, so from a security perspective, which, as you mentioned, is now really part of my title, that question really brings me back to my earlier days in forensics, where it wasn't that long ago that encryption became the de facto standard for things like an iPhone or BitLocker being on Windows devices. So we used to have the saying of dead box forensics, which basically means turn your computer off, ship it to our lab, or bring it to us. We'll image it, do all the needful things. And then all of a sudden, this new encryption thing, not really new, but new to our space, came about. And honestly, from a forensics perspective, there really wasn't a lot of tool providers that were out there doing research, providing us, new workarounds or new solutions. And even in the early days, a lot of those were tied to government organizations only. So love it or hate it, the security part of my world now, where if we look at data breaches becoming more and more, or proliferating across our industry, more and more front page headlines, and essentially the threats continue to occur, it's really been advantageous to the industry of e-discovery and forensics in that the amount of research, effort, tools, all those things went up to be able to essentially give us, the necessary requirements to be able to get to encrypted data. And one of the interesting things to me was early on when we got to the point where there was memory forensics, where essentially there's volatile artifacts that if you shut that PC down, you'll never get. That really led to a change in evolution from the whole dead box into, well, let's make sure we capture it live and get the information, or all of the information that we look to. I don't think cloud storage, from my perspective, has really changed that much. I mean, one of the early providers like Dropbox and whatnot, they've always presented us challenges, and how data is stored. You can't really get a logical or a physical or any of the normal words that you would use to describe an image. So we've really had to adapt, but I think that, again, the adaptation of that was similar to all of the security items that came that causes problems. But, again, from my role here at IST, where I'm more involved in corporate governance, a little bit less involved in the day-to-day e-discovery, we have the continuous fight with what we call shadow IT. And for those of you who haven't heard that concept, that essentially means that my end users, or any corporate end users, are out there procuring services without it being governed by a central body. And I know Judson's going to expand upon a little bit of that in his in some challenges here. But at the end of the day, when corporate IT can't reset passwords or can't provide access or can't provide those workarounds, that provides a huge legal risk to any sort of internal risk compliance as to what company data is leaving or what information do they not have purview into, to be able to make those determinations that they need. So, corporations are definitely leveraging a large amount of cloud applications. I kind of differentiate cloud applications from cloud storage just, because they do different things, which is going to continue to increase in the whole structured versus unstructured data. Structured data being things like in a database, which are a lot harder for e-discovery teams to process and review. And I think the third one really comes down to privacy. So, encryption provides us with a form of privacy as a human to what information can be retrieved. But when we start getting into regulation, from a technology workaround, yes, some things can be broken. Good encryption is really hard to break, but getting the keys to essentially bypass the encryption is something that we generally can do. But I think as regulation continues to occur, that becomes more and more interesting in this whole privacy versus encryption versus legal process.
Yeah, from my experience, I mean, the barriers brought on by encrypted devices, it just emphasizes to me that it's crucial to work with your client's IT team as much as possible on the best path forward. So we do logical collections, and opposed to physical images, like this allows us to access data and preserve it, which circumvents the whole encryption barrier. But that route requires login credentials, and a lot of times we handle devices where we don't have login credentials that are valid. So working with the IT team at the client, it gives you a route that you're able to reset user credentials using admin accounts that we wouldn't have here from the service provider perspective. For example, like many companies can retrieve BitLocker keys from a domain management console when dealing with an encrypted Windows device, where the user is not going to be friendly to us when it comes to collections. So I think, it's very crucial to have that relationship with the client and really work with the IT team, just like your colleagues here, as you would with an IT or IST coworker. Speaking of encrypted devices, I think one of the barriers in the industry as a whole is locked iPhones. We can circumvent this through the use of iCloud to access non-encrypted backups, but when we don't have iCloud login credentials, the barrier is just a significant barrier for not just us, but the entire industry. I mean, as most are aware, like even the FBI and law enforcement agencies are having problems getting into locked iPhones when it comes to, alleged criminals and terrorists. So I think that is going to be something that the industry has to tackle as a whole. It's a sensitive thing to juggle both the custodian's privacy with the obligation to collect and preserve through a legal matter. It kind of raises a crucial question: how do you force someone to turn over evidence that may be used against them? So these are the type of questions that we're asking ourselves, and to us, it's the best path forward is just to be able to work with your client and bring them in to help you with a difficult situation, to both not make a volatile situation even worse, but also open up your toolbox to be able to use tools that the client has that you may not have to use.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And you kind of answered what my next question was going to be, Judson, and that's fine. But one of the things you hit on, both of you actually, is that relationship between IT and the stakeholders, the legal stakeholders, and that relationship is something. I mean, I was a huge advocate for sort of bridging that gap. It's how you keep the stakeholders informed. It's how you move a project forward in a really logical and sensible and efficient way. But let me ask you this. Everybody always wants to know about pricing. Streamlined pricing, transparency in pricing is always crucial to a healthy vendor-client relationship. Can you guys share some insights? How is IST working to create the kind of transparent pricing models that clients can easily understand and rely upon?
Sure, I can touch on that. So as I mentioned earlier, I come from a litigator background. I was a paralegal for quite a few years, and then I became a case manager. So I have a lot of experience being very frustrated with looking at pages and pages of invoices and hidden fees, and kind of being jaded by the whole fine print of the pricing when I work with vendors.
Trying to decipher those line items, right?
Exactly, yeah. So every client I have, I come to them and I tell them that I'm like, I'm not going to, get you to sign up for something you don't need. We're not going to trick you into, sign up for a service that you don't know you're going to get billed for. So one of the things I think is really unique to IST, and I can say this from my perspective from being a former litigator, is that, we have a very streamlined way to bill clients. We only charge for four things, and that includes processing data, hosting data, project management time, and user licenses. Very simple, four things. It doesn't matter if the case is 100 custodians or if it's one custodian. We only charge for four things. Of those four things, like one of them can fluctuate, right? Project management time. Like, what does that mean? But even with that price point, there's no mystery. Like, the IST team clearly communicates with the client every time a PM is working on a specific task. You're going to know who is doing what. And one of the things that's really unique here at IST is that our PMs there's a personalization factor to our PMs. Every case you work with us on, you're going to know your PM's name. And they're going to be involved in the case from start to finish. So it's not like you're sending out an email into like this black hole, an email list, or not knowing who is going to be doing the task, how long it's going to take, what are they going to charge you. Like, there's transparency in every single task that our PMs do. So there's not going to be any surprises when it comes to the billing. And, to me, that's unique because I've worked with a lot of different vendors throughout my career, and I've never encountered, that sort of like simplicity when it comes to the bill. And, I tell people, when you have a project with us, you're only going to have to look at two documents. You're going to look at the statement of work. It's going to show what we're going to do for you for this project. And then you're going to look at the one-page invoice you're going to receive, and that's it. So 2 pages of pricing compared to 5 to 10. To me, that's a refreshing thing in the industry.
That is fairly unique. I got to tell you. I mean, all the years I've been in this business, no one's ever said, "Hey, we charge for 4 things." That's interesting, fascinating. I appreciate that.
Just one thing to add to that real quick, Mike. From my perspective too, and I've been on the backside of a lot of e-discovery organizations, doing some form of work platform and really process. But I think the other thing that frustrates people in e-discovery invoicing or billing is when they ask the question, they're asking it to somebody who doesn't actually know the answer to the question, right? So then you're basically saying, well, what does this mean or what does this do? And you're getting a response of something that doesn't really give you the proverbial warm and fuzzies. So I think the way we're set up with people like Judson and others who are more tied to the consultancy and delivery of the services or understanding of the services, they can also pick up that phone or answer that call, give a detailed explanation as to what the client is paying for, to again reassure them that not only is it not this black box of page after page after page, but also if you have a question, we're here to help you to answer it and understand it and work through it.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. So, I mean, I'd be remiss of me to not ask about emerging trends and technologies. Tell me, I'll give you both a chance to answer, but what are you excited about that could revolutionize the e-discovery process, near future or even, further out?
Well, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, this is what everyone is talking about right now, but I think we'd be remiss not to talk about how AI is going to integrate into the e-discovery process. I think right now it's a little overblown. I don't think we're there yet where it's going to revolutionize the industry, but I think that this year could shape up to be a game changer in terms of maybe not the way that AI is integrated into the e-discovery process, but people's expectation that it will be. I mean, almost every person I talk to about potentially coming on board with us, they bring it up as, well, how is AI going to help me with predictive coding for document review? How is it going to help me figure out the information that I need from this bulk of data that I can't even navigate? And I think that it's possible down the road, like we may one day see an EDRM model where the AI analytics is like kind of float upstream in the model, and it's going to become an earlier on factor into the process. But that being said, let's be real for a second. I mean, the legal industry is notoriously slow to adapt to technology changes. So, I mean, right now I'm reading about how this is going to be the year that law firms finally embrace, moving to the cloud infrastructure as opposed to on-site, which that's even the gears behind, other industries. So, the question is like, are law firms going to be able to adapt to this new world that we're living in, where AI, it can bolster the process. It can make lawyers' lives easier, but are we gonna have to force their hand into that? Because it's true. Like a lot of law firms that have the discovery process, they sign up with the vendor. They don't really take full advantage of the AI analytics when it comes to what is out there. So I think the next year is really going to be telling as far as how that's going to change the industry. But I'm personally excited for it. I think it's a really exciting industry to be involved with. Every other week there's a new update as far as what AI can do, and being able to be on the front lines as far as implementing that into the legal industry is really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm always kind of amazed by the hype. You stay in this industry long enough, every time a new shiny object comes out, there's sort of an overblown reaction, and then it kind of retracts and everybody gets their footing, and we figure out, okay, how can we actually use this? Jordan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm a bit more pessimistic overall on the AI side of life here and discovery. So I think ChatGPT obviously has a lot of value adds to make us more efficient. As an example, like ChatGPT is just one model, but there's definitely a large use case for us day to day and a lot of things that we do. But that doesn't translate into discovery. These learning models that essentially learn from the data that you feed it are pretty much counterintuitive to the secrecy and the information that we hold every day that nobody would ever want leaked or released or really searchable in any way, shape, or form. So for me, I think from an advancement perspective, not getting into the complexities of the most recent or the newest shiny objects, I still think e-discovery is extremely tied down with manual effort through every part of the process. Be it collecting evidence from data sources, kind of as we started this conversation of cloud sources, encryption, what have you, every step of the way is fraught with error. It's fraught with a lot of human effort to try to get to something to work with, even from processing, analyzing, promoting data into review. So I really think from a trend perspective that I'm seeing more and more is more about automation of these actual processes and building in that QA QC into the set automation. So I do think that there's a lot of ways that even analytics of old can be leveraged for that QC process that becomes very cumbersome when we have millions and millions and millions of records that we really don't want to have errors in. So I still think for me, we have to be able to automate before we can really even talk about things that are happening at corporate levels where the amount of governance and requirements are significantly less, right? They can take advantage of the new and shiny pretty quickly, whereas we are kind of averse, not just we as an industry, but I would say legal in general as an entire business model is really averse to the newest and scariest of things that just don't necessarily make sense to a lot of people right now. And I think AI in a lot of ways doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it's impressive what it can pull off.
It is kind of impressive. But I'm with you in some respects, and with Judson and others. I think that I've yet to see a real sort of large language model e-discovery workflow that has really been integrated. I mean, maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't. I haven't devoted a great deal of thought to it, but I haven't seen a practical application yet. We'll see what happens. But it is exciting at the same time, to Judson's point. It's exciting to see what the possibilities are and to just move along with the industry. I just wish there was less sort of overreaction, I'll use that phrase, to the new shiny objects. All right. Yeah.
One last thing before you switch topics here. So, from an LLM perspective, reading from an AI model, I do think that there's still a lot of things that we can do in this industry to enrich the data. So, what predictive review, right, is building a model and trying to train it to do things. Well, what if we could build more relationships out of the data set that we have without taking it to a cloud provider that's learning from this data? Whether it be pulling out specific objects or entities in say pictures or video, or bring out the sentiment or other things that language models can pull off that can help a litigator or reviewer get to something of interest or take a different interpretation to how a sentence is presented that may have more meaning than what we have today.
It's a fair point. And to be honest, I mean, my sort of, this is a very generalized and high level take on it, but we've been kind of working with these models already, just on a much smaller scale, right? They call them small language models, if you will, right?
Right.
We put a bunch of data into a system and we analyze it, we index it, we analyze it, we do whatever we need to do for it. But it's the same sort of concept, just on a smaller scale, on a case-based scale, whereas these larger models are just trying to dig into the whole universe, which is really not what casework is about, to be honest. All right, so as we approach time, you guys have anything new, anything interesting, any new developments at IST that our listeners would love to hear about?
Well, I guess I may have given you some purview into what we're working towards with automation and process. That's very much tied to our delivery of services, and tying it closer to some analytics products that we have the ability to work towards. I think, again, from my perspective, the e-discovery flow today of collect, process, promote, and then do some black magic is maybe a little bit inverse to where it should be, where maybe it's more so around focusing that collective energy and thoughts on how do we apply, whether it be less collection or bringing that data closer to processing to bring information out of it. So when it gets to review, we have more value in the review platform. I think, that's from a technology perspective. Obviously, we're continuously evolving from a training and process perspective. I think you may mention a couple of these questions really about how do evidence repositories continue to cause us pain. We've had a couple of custom type applications that we develop. So at IST, we do have a in-house development team for different business lines. So we've had a couple of like custom CRMs and whatnot that, there's been no tool, no proverbial tool we can just buy to get the information they need. So, really trying to take a step back and think about the industry as a whole and how do we continue to differentiate as a service provider. I think bringing those types of capabilities where not everybody can do the same is definitely something that we're trying to highlight and focus more on.
Yeah, I'm sure folks can appreciate that. Judson, anything to add?
I would just say, like, I'm personally very excited about what our forensics team is doing when it comes to, every new week, I feel like they have a new collections tool to use. And, we're going back to trends in the industry. Like, we're seeing a lot of forensics tools that are finally being developed with e-discovery in mind. A lot of forensics tools were initially built to assist law enforcement. So a lot of them were not really designed to be able to, extract data and put it into a review platform. But every month that goes by, we're seeing more and more of that. So now, we use Celebrate, and they're able to finally export text messages to a relatively short message format. Even social media, like, Instagram, that, they can change their platform every single week, which is going to change the collection process. But even now, we've seen that they're providing native export options for us to even go in and, pull data from an Instagram account. So even that, which used to be a huge barrier as far as collecting stuff from, a service like a social media service, that is getting easier to do. So that is something that, I like to think myself as knowledgeable about the industry, but I have nothing on a forensics team. So I learned so much from them, and just seeing how the tools are being evolved every single month is just very exciting to me. And that's something that we are always trying to up our game at.
Great. Appreciate that. So as we wrap up here, where can listeners go to learn more? How should they get in touch?
So you can always check us out at our website. And you can also, I believe that we have a webpage set up at ACEDS, so you can communicate with me via the ACEDS affiliate partner website.
Yep.
And I'm always available to people that ever need support, the DC area, Pacific Northwest, or anywhere nationwide. We're here to help. I always see myself as consultant first and a service provider second. So we're very excited to work with people around the country.
There you go. Awesome. All right, guys, this has been great. Thank you so much for making time. Jordan, Judson, thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. If you are interested in our short form video interviews like this one, you can find We Are ACEDS Live in your LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook feeds, or check out the ACEDS YouTube channel where you can watch previous interviews and live streams. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.